In the laboratory, Zephyr uses all kind of ingredients as he boils that ingredients together with the Spider Queen's poison, resulting in Poison King's number 61. He asks Rose to help him with something, as he marks something on a wood from the Arkan tree that is hard as metal. She doesn't have the slightest idea on how Zephyr is planning with the thing he gave her. Finishes marking the wood, he uses his mana to punch the log, splitting them to needles. He explained that they are called acupuncture needles, as in the East, it's used for medical purposes. Zephyr dips them into the two kind of poisons for 10 minutes. Poison is very simple. Its only use is to kill someone without much effort, or so everyone thought. But when the demon race invaded the world, and the gods confiscated the power they gave them, the only thing humanity can rely on is poisons. In an instant, Zephyr stabs a bunch of needles into his hand, but just because he is the maker of the poison, doesn't mean he is immune to the pain. And pain spread out to his whole body as the poison makes its way to his vein. Even with the great pain he feels, Zephyr immediately crosses his leg and cultivating internal energy flow quells the poison by circulating magic power. Zephyr can increase his stats to the next stage if he succeeds. But if he fails, his physical body will shatter into pieces. To him, that can't even be called a crisis, nor can it even be called pain, remembering in his past life, he had to battle Ned to death, or has to be powerless in front of the demon god. A few hours later, in the northern forest near the Temple of Light, there is a magic flare shooting high up in the sky. There's a bunch hunters get chased by a pack of monsters. As they are not strong enough, they unable to deal with the monsters. One by one the hunters get eaten by the monsters like bird. The leader is the last man alive, and it's about 5 kilometers until he reaches the temple, which will take over 20 minutes. As he stumbles, he looks at the flock of the bird, thinking that he will be reduced to ashes in less than 2 minutes. As the bird strikes at him, they get struck by a dagger from above. A starfall-like meteor comes toward the man, making a huge explosion. It turns out it's Zephyr, who already succeeds in tempering his physical body, as the mana can be seen leaking out from his body. The flock come after him, but as he is getting so much stronger than before, he twists one of the bird's neck and rip it apart as it was paper. Looking at the remaining monsters that broke from the dungeon, he counts there are 12 birds left. He uses 12 consecutive attacks to them, and with every attack it kills every bird that remain. After dealing with it, Zephyr asks the man about the location of the dungeon, which he points out, telling Zephyr where it is, and he instantly goes there. The man regrets telling Zephyr the location of the dungeon, as 4 of his party members are died inside, and 3 that got out, leaving him as the only survivor. He regrets it so much for not telling Zephyr that the dungeon is dangerous and he should have waited for reinforcements. But to his surprise, there are all kinds of screams can be heard from the dungeon. To put it simply, it sounds like a massacre. At the sunrise, Zephyr comes out from the dungeon, dragging the boss's head with him. With that, Zephyr thoughts how his body feels so light, as it seems his stats have increased by 2 or 3 folds, and his experiments is successful. After that, he shoots a green flare. A signal indicates the emergency crisis is resolved. On the other hand, Sahach is finished massacre one village after another, and as soon he reach a certain level while also being so determined. Only then he will take his revenge on Zephyr. A few days later in the temple, the news that Zephyr single-handedly cleared the uncontrolled cicatrice nest comes to the temple's head. What's more is the boss is a 30-meter-long boss. Matthias, the senior heresy examiner 3rd Division, informed Lucius, the head of the Temple Knights, regarding the incident where both the field investigation and the survivor's testimony match. Zephyr is really making himself appealing in order to participate in the raid about 20 days from now. Matthias suggests to Lucius that they should investigate Zephyr to check if he is a demon god worshipper. But Lucius prevents him to do so and order him to let Zephyr be, explaining that they won't be able to investigate thoroughly, so as long as the demon god worshipper is useful to them, Lucius will use them anyway. Matthias is worried that the worshipper will steal from the temple, and that's the reason for Lucius to bring him in the dungeon. Inside, stored the Spear of Brilliant Light and the Winged Shield of Michael. Lucius spent a third of his wealth to obtain those items. He tells Matthias not to worry, as Lucius will be invincible in the raid. Back at the barrack, the trio finishes cleaning up themselves as Rose walk up to them. They bow down greeting her, but she just mock them, asking them to pay off their interest on time. They were wondering why Rose, the demon sister, is coming out from their room, which Zephyr can be seen wearing a new ring that probably given by Rose. They were surprised to see it, asking whether it was given by her, so Zephyr explained that it was a ring of purification, which will assist in his mana circulation and increases his magic defense. Zephyr can also use the skill called Curse Removal once a day. Rose asks him to tell her anything he needs, as she will get everything he might need, making Zephyr all fired up. It turns out that Rose heard of it from an informant in the black market, the assassin guild called Persephone. Using poison to increase their stats, they were legendary assassin that never missed their target with their remarkable martial arts skills and deadly poisons, suspiciously good hunting skills, and body reinforcement using poison. Everything starting to fall into place for her. His dear customer was an assassin from Persephone. Due to an internal conflict, Persephone fell to ruin a few years ago, but she heard that the high nobles were their customers are looking for the survivors and the poisons they used. And the nobles are willing to use colossal amounts of money to obtain the best talent and the best poison. Thinking about it, she thought that she should support Zephyr to her utmost to make him hers, but Zephyr knows that she seems to have severely misunderstood it. Well, for him, it's a good thing if she spreads rumors about him, so that Zephyr's old friend can find Zephyr on his own. Not only Rose misunderstood, but Goth also seems to misunderstood about the ring. He thought that Zephyr has a close relationship with Rose. But then suddenly, there's a knock on their door, so they'll see what it's all about. But there's no one in the hallway. Only a piece of paper sticks on the wall, informing an emergency order for Goth's group. Looking at it, Goth wonders who would like to deliver an emergency order secretly like that. But when Zephyr takes a look at it, he knows that the signature and the contents are written by Ned. He knows that Ned prepares that invitation, so he tells the group that he will go by himself. Wearing the hunter's robe, Zephyr runs with lightning speed towards the location, thinking that there's about 20 days until the Temple Knight's raid. He explains that the dungeon the raid is going to is no ordinary dungeon. It called the Tomb of the Abominable Princess, one of the 8 riddles of the world, the ruins of the ancient kingdom of Media. Due to the extreme difficulty, it has been attempted for over 10 years, but no one has reached the boss room yet. Therefore, the criteria for the raid party participation rights is also complex. Be in a hunting team ranked 5th and above for the past year, or be the direct slave of a priest confirmed to participate, or those that received a recommendation letter from the direct slave. One can participate only by satisfying one of those conditions. It's impossible for Zephyr's team to gain enough achievements to reach the 5th rank by starting now. Therefore, in this life Zephyr will use Ned, because Ned is the direct slave of the heresy examiner Matthias. If Zephyr fools Ned and get his recommendation letter, then he can enter the raid party. There's no way that Ned, who received a mission that he cannot fail, would ignore Zephyr, who uses the same martial arts as him. And Zephyr knows that Ned must be already itching to test him. Does he think Zephyr is an ally sent by his master or a criminal who stole their sect's martial technique? If Zephyr is a force that Ned must bring along, he must know how strong Zephyr is. The voice that welcomes Zephyr instead wasn't Ned. It was Sahach, saying how dare Zephyr comes alone. So Zephyr wonders why Sahach is here, then blatantly tells him to go home, as Zephyr doesn't feel like playing with him. Sahach says that the pain from the scars on his mouth is because of Zephyr, adding that he hasn't been able to sleep soundly. So Sahach put up a stance, boasting as he will show Zephyr his new power. But with a lightning flash speed, Zephyr gets behind Sahach and knock him out. He tells how stupid Sahach is, shouting for the people around to come out as he will take them on, thinking that Ned is perfectionist and wouldn't test Zephyr with Sahach alone. But behind him, Sahach rises up, laughing. With the flute in hand, he is enraged that Zephyr ignores him again. So he summons the demon, claiming that he will kill Zephyr, then slowly and painfully rip Zephyr to shreds. He commands Shoggoth, the demon in his possession, to devour Zephyr. It is a surprise though, how can the biological weapon of the demon god worshipper, Shoggoth, would be there to see. He explains that the Shoggoth hibernate in the form of an egg, and awaken when they hear the sound of an instrument imbued with the power of hypnosis. The Shoggoth is a mindless creature with an infinite appetite, and physical attacks have no effect on it. It gets stronger by absorbing the mana of the human it devours. These features already make it a tremendous threat, but they are not what makes the Shoggoth truly terrifying. Mind corruption. It begin from being in contact with the Shoggoth. One then experience the feeling of terror, similar to that of fear, and start to hallucinate. When one's mind corruption reaches 100%, one enters a state of frenzy. Human in a state of frenzy lose their reasoning and start killing everyone around them. It is the most optimal method of indiscriminate massacre. An artificial monster made by demon god worshippers to slaughter other human being with ease. But Zephyr is not afraid though. The Shoggoth bites him, while Sahach express how stupid Zephyr is, saying that Zephyr must want to die looking at the demon. Zephyr's eyes starts to turn red, a sign that he is about to enter a frenzied state, and the mind corruption is about to reach 100%. But unknown to Sahach, Zephyr has the ring from Rose. Using the skill he removes the curse and completely incinerate the demon around him. Zephyr chokes Sahatch, saying that a long time ago, he only ever thought about keeping himself and those around him alive. Zephyr thought that was the obvious thing to do in this cruel world. But one day, other thoughts started to appear in his head. What would happen if he had more comrades that knew how to fight? What would have happened if the remaining humans started working together more? If that happened, the people he loves, would they have lived a little longer? That is why, in this life, Zephyr saved people that he could save, and gave those that have desire to get stronger a chance. However, Zephyr states that Sahatch is not one of them. So, Zephyr starts rampaging to the miserable man. With full aura in hand, he starts to punch Sahatch that's seemingly worthy of those punches. A skill begin with a barrage of blows, and with a final palm strike, strikes the fog of blood that the opponent coughs up. That ruptures the drops of blood and generates lightning. It is a skill known as the Dragon's Roar, feared by many in the East. Dragon King style secret art, Thunderclap Palm. An instant death. It must have been very painful with all the electricity flowing through his entire body. The fitting death for a bastard like Sahatch. Zephyr then picks up the flute, as a physical attacks don't work on the Shoggoth, so he plays a song that breaks the connection of magic power that connects the Shoggoth's cell. Suddenly Ned appears, as he is surprised that Zephyr is able to play the tune, adding that Zephyr knows quite a lot of things. Finally the time has come. Zephyr need to pass Ned's test and make him believe Zephyr is one of the demon god worshippers. That's the only way to change the future, and the debt in Zephyr's heart that he couldn't repay in his past life. He wants Ned to face a different end this time. In order to do so, Zephyr needs a chance to get closer to Ned by fooling him. Ned says that he has been watching the whole time, and he has come to a conclusion that Zephyr is a target for elimination. So he dashes towards Zephyr with a lightning speed, going to strike him while Zephyr is ready with his stance of the secret technique. In a flash, Ned slashes Zephyr 14 times, but there is something weird that Ned feels in his hand, as all of his attacks miss Zephyr. Suddenly, there are 3 stone imbued with lighting aura going to him. It is shown how impressive Zephyr is, that he manages to slip through all of the strike then even counter-attack. Ned knows that there shouldn't be many people in this continent aside from his master that can surpass his sword speed, so he assumes that Zephyr must have used another method. But Zephyr asks him why Ned is fighting an unarmed person with a sword. So he just dropped the sword and start his own stance as well. The two-person is facing off with each other with the exact same martial technique. Using the same principle as the Thunderclap Palm, Ned wraps his body in electricity and gains explosive acceleration. But those from the same clan know how to counter that move. Zephyr uses the counter with the exact power to completely negate Ned's attacks. Now Ned knows that Zephyr is the real deal, thinking that it makes it even more confusing as only his senior brother and he, who have been taught the secret art of the Dragon King style. So he asks who the hell Zephyr is. It is then explained that Demon God Worshipper, rank 9, Master of the East, Lone Dragon. A man from the east who crossed the land of the demon, the Sahara Desert, from the eastern continent to here, the Aslan continent. He who rose up to the executive rank of the demon god cult with his mysterious martial art technique, Dragon King style, had 2 successors. One is the biological son of the lone dragon, named Strong Dragon, and another is one that he picked up from the Aslan continent, Ned Streeter. To gain a deep understanding through sparring, 2 successors are required. Therefore, no more than 2 is needed, since the principles of martial arts techniques must be kept confidential. So, it is suspicious that Zephyr knows the technique and obliterated the valuable asset of the cult, the Shoggoth. Zephyr then tells him that it's pretty simple if he uses his head a little, adding that he is a shadow apprentice, prepared for when one of the 2 apprentices dies. A shadow disciple that even the insiders don't know about is secretly trained in case something happens to the official successor. But they are killed if the official successor safely develops and inherits their master's position. So Zephyr takes advantage of that situation. If Zephyr telling the truth, his identity should be the most well-kept secret. So Ned asks him on to why their master sent him there. And Zephyr explains that the orders he received are to hide his identity from other demon god worshippers, and to participate in the raid with his own strength. He adds that he is supposed to take over Ned's mission in case anything happens to him. Ned asks whether Zephyr knows what his mission is, and he answers that Ned are going to run away with the dragon heart. It is then explained that there is a magic stone formed in the heart of a dragon, called a dragon heart. It is the greatest item said to give one power comparable to that of a dragon. Zephyr says that there's no way the Temple Knights can follow the electrical acceleration of the Dragon King style. The moment Ned gets his hands on the dragon heart, no one will be able to stop him from escaping. However, whatever Ned can do, Zephyr can do as well, adding that their master was anxious with just Ned on this mission. The reason why Zephyr defied his order and lured Ned there with something flashy was because the raid participation conditions were more complex than he expected. He doesn't want to take the hard way when the easy way is right in front of him. That's that, but Zephyr adds that in truth, he personally have something to tell Ned. Zephyr comes closer and whispers it's about the blood tears. It's the stolen treasure of Ned's family, as he is following his master in order to reclaim it and take revenge on the temple. The only ones that know that are his master and Ned. In the end, Zephyr says that he will tell Ned when he judges that Ned are trustworthy. So then Ned tells Zephyr that there's somewhere he need to go first, asking him to come along. On an abandoned building near the temple, Ned announces that he has brought the last one. Introduces Zephyr, sent by their master to assist in his mission to the demon god sect, adding that Ned has gone through the procedures to confirm Zephyr's identity. It turns out that Matthias is also one of the demon god worshipper, who will leads 40 of them that will follow the Lucius in the raid. While Matthias explained the plan again as Zephyr is the newly recruited worshipper. Zephyr thought it's so absurd that it's not even funny. They are different from Sahach, who completely relied on items and monsters, or the past Zephyr who had nothing but ambition at that current time. The demon god worshipper are all very strong. They are elite force formed for the sole purpose of executing that mission. Zephyr thinks if all of them have that much strength, then why are they following the demon god? While Ned thoughts that the fact Zephyr revealed himself means that his master does not completely trust him, let alone that Zephyr knows about the blood tears, and thoughts that the one his master trusts may not be Ned but Zephyr. But he convinced himself to not waver, as his master promised him that if Ned become an important person to his master, he will fulfill Ned's revenge. In a roundabout way, Ned needs his master for the sake of his revenge. So for that purpose he needs to get his hands on the dragon heart no matter what. Also, if Zephyr is a shadow disciple who has been groomed to become Ned's replacement, Ned assumes that Zephyr may desire to aim for Ned's neck. With that, Ned tries to shake hands with Zephyr, thinking if Zephyr wants to snatch away his life, it's better to keep Zephyr close to him, rather than keeping his distance. Zephyr thoughts that if he can shift Ned's trust to him, Ned will be a great help in overcoming everything that will happen in the future. Zephyr had countless connections that disappeared in vain. Among them, the first one he will pick back up is Ned. Back in his past life, Zephyr gets threatened by Ned where he is injured, and Ned asks him to choose whether he will help Ned escape the cave by learning the ultimate martial arts technique or to die and become beef jerky for him. Zephyr's first connection that made him into the strongest human is his master, who taught him the Dragon King style, Ned. On the next day, the names of the raid party members that will clear the Tomb of the Abominable Princess dungeon were announced. Everything is according to plan, as Zephyr should settle out all his own arrangements now. Although their time together was short, they'll understand that Zephyr has a goal, and that goal is much bigger than anything that they ordinary people can imagine. Zephyr tells him that as long as he trains himself to death, there will come a day when he will be able to walk alongside Zephyr, asking him to follow Zephyr then. With that, they bid their farewell, and now the two people who should be dead by now are alive. Looking at their shining eyes, Zephyr feels good since it means that he didn't make mistake. However, those guys are as good as dead as of now, because 3 years from now, if the demon god worshippers succeed in their summoning, many people, including those guys, will lose their lives. To stop that from happening, Zephyr must get his hands on the dragon heart. The next one is to comes to Rose for equipment. The dungeon he is going crawled with living and moving skeletons. They do not feel pain since they are already dead and their bodies made up of only sturdy bones. Therefore, to defeat a skeleton, one will need to break them with blunt weapon. Additionally, Zephyr picks up a sword called Twilight Long Sword, as the things he needs to worry about in the dungeon aren't mere skeletons. The Temple of Light that's trying to end the 10-year dungeon clearing attempt, and the demon god worshippers who will jump into the fray for the survival of the cult. Zephyr must push through them all and obtain the dragon heart. In other words, the entire party is his enemy. And one more thing, Ned still doesn't trust Zephyr yet. For now, even if he is telling Ned the truth, it won't be easy to convince him. So, if Zephyr fails to persuade Ned, and they end up fighting, it won't just end in the middle this time like it did before, because it will be until one of them dies. Now, an enchanter named Angelia comes inside. She will be imbued the sword that Zephyr takes with divine power, and it turns out that she is one of the greatest enchanters in the temple. With that, she enchants all of Zephyr's equipment. Though he need to prepare to fight his party members, he can't slack off on preparations for the dungeon. And with that, his basic preparations are complete. Rose pays Angelia with the enchants, totaling 3,000 gold. Looking at it, Zephyr is surprised to learn that backdoor enchantment by Angelia only that much. He thanks Rose that he doesn't need to pay commission, and it turns out that Rose already prepared for some losses to score some points with Zephyr. Now, Zephyr thanks her again as she already helps him that much, saying that Rose was probably short on time as well, which makes her blushes, and there she goes, the first victim of Dragon God Zephyr. Then, he tells her that he has no more money left, breaking Rose apart in an instant. He claims that he is unable to find anything worth money, and he doesn't have anything he can give to Rose. In the end, he takes out the 2 poison he cooked. Looking at them, Rose freaks out, thinking that it was the deadly poisons of Persephone, so she begs him to give them to her. After giving it to her, Zephyr tells her to not sell them to the contact named Mole as he is dangerous, so he bid his farewell to her and goes back. The next morning, the party lined up in the training ground, and there are quite a lot of people that will go to the dungeon. Among all those people, only a few survived in Zephyr's past life, and it will be no different this time as well. The party leader, Temple Knight Captain Lucius, arrives greeting everyone that lined up. The raid party members are as divided into vanguard and rearguard team, and they will be under the command of 4 individuals. The healer captain, Arno, rearguard captain, Leona, vanguard captain, Matthias, and the party captain, Lucius, the bearers of the stigmata that given by the gods, and called the Saint. He says that with that raid, they will put an end to the 10-year-long dungeon clearance attempt. With that, he tells them to endure the harsh training that begin today, as the party members cheer up with him, praising the almighty area. At the special training ground, Shrieking Peak, Zephyr climbs up the cliff, thinking that the glory for the party members is only a gimmick. However, the true nature isn't some virtuous goal such as the action of a hero or for humanity, but purely for business. They engage in politics to gain the dungeon clearing rights, gather party members, gather investments for the endless expenses such as costs for labor, equipment, potions, etc. The preparations are finally finished and the dungeon is cleared after several years. Once the dungeon has been safely cleared, road and cities are built on the newly secure lands, and investors can reap the various benefits including the increased in value. That's the kind of large-scale business it is. The third great temple of the Temple of Light is nothing more than an outpost for Saint Lucius to clear the dungeon, as the people who participate in the raid are nurtured and those selected for the raid are the elites who have received daily training. In the training ground, the instructor explained to assume the light she summoned as the enemy's magic attacks. Those who are hit 3 times are dead, so they need to raise their hand and come out. So the mock battle is begun. The soldiers is having a hard time, even though it was only a training. But Zephyr easily pierces through the puppet, and Ned instructs him to not reveal the Dragon King style in a place like that. Together, they goes toward the golem. With his nimble feet, Ned jumps around from the puppet to the golem. Simultaneously, they work together to defeat the golem along with the puppets. The training to eliminate 500 golems is complete, so they can have a 15 minutes break. Arno is surprised to see both of Zephyr and Ned is doing better than he expected. Evaluates the level of the slaves is higher than the previous raid. He then uses his light magic to completely treat their injuries and recover their fatigue. He adds that as long as the healers are around, they will be able to do 4 weeks worth of training in the span of 2 weeks that they had. With that, he starts the training again. When the evening falling, Ned refuses to eat the food that the temple provided. Zephyr brings a plate full of food for them, but Ned still refuses, saying that he needs to maintain his weight to maximize his acceleration. So Zephyr decides to do the same since he will have to carry out the mission if Ned fails. Then Ned questions Zephyr whether he's still planning on outdoing Ned. Zephyr asks him not to make such a face, as he has brought them something good, which is the expensive drink to warm them up, so they can move around better. Drinking at the sunset, Ned asks Zephyr on how much does he know about Ned. At first, he thought that Zephyr was trying to eliminate Ned to take his place. However, Ned realized that Zephyr has no desire to harm him during the training period, adding if Zephyr knows about Ned's deepest secret, he should have demands things now, but he didn't. So Ned asks again what Zephyr means by saying that Zephyr will tell him when Ned deemed trustworthy. Looking at him, Zephyr thoughts that Ned is different. At first, Ned was blindly trying to kill him, yet being together for 2 weeks had an effect on their relationship. So Zephyr tells him that he is asking the wrong question. What should he ask should be where the blood tears is and who has it. So Zephyr tells him where the sword is and who has it. It is explained that the Strier Barony's heirloom, the demonic sword Blood Tears. It is a trophy that their ancestor obtained after defeating the demons of the desert. Once their ancestor offered up that sword to the king, he gave their family the title of Baron and ordered them to watch over the Blood Tears for generations to come. Ned's father tells him that one day, Ned will become a baron of the Strier family, as he will also inherit that honorable mission when that time comes, and his father encourages him to become a knight that befits that sword. But then, the temple came knocking, the baron screaming for the temple to give back the sword as he only put the baron title and estate as collateral for the loan. But not the blood tears. The priest explained to him that he given up his baron title, and the blood tears belongs to the baron, so he no longer have any authority for it, which makes him angry, then unsheathes his sword to strike the priest. But the temple's knight interrupt the attack. A knight chops both of his hands and the other stabs him in the stomach, while Ned can only watch his father getting killed in front of him. When the priest explained if his sword had reached the priest, harm the son of bishop who is noble blood, they would had to execute his son as well. That's 12 years ago, when the dungeon investments start to become excessive, but raids continued to fail. That caused the economic crisis, dungeon bubble break. The Temple of Light made a fortune by selling deformed products, deceived investors, and maximized their benefits. Like Ned's father, the investor that bought products through investment, become penniless and forced onto the streets. That was all caused by the high-ranking priests, especially Priest Aldian, who scammed Ned's father, using their friendship as leverage and even took away his life. Ned searched all over the world for the blood tears, the symbol of his family, that he hasn't even heard a rumor of. What's shocking to him is that his master, the one who possessed the blood tears. So Zephyr explained that not long ago, Master told him about the identities of the demon god cult and the 12 apostles, the executives of the cult. The cult leader and half of the 12 apostles are high-ranking priests of the Temple of Light. As they depart into the dungeon, Zephyr plants the seed of doubts that Ned's master plans to offer the cult leader the dragon heart that he bring him. If that happens, they will no longer be able to touch his body forever, and Ned's revenge will go down the drain. Zephyr ultimately saying that they were deceived from the start. To say that Ned's master, who he considered to be his family, has been deceiving him, he thinks that there's no way he can believe that. But, if it's not the truth, Ned questioned how does Zephyr even knows the words that his master said to him. So, he come into a crossroad, whether to believe his master or what Zephyr's